Shalom and welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed the talk by James K.A. Smith, You Are What You Love. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, I suggest you pause this video, listen to Smith's video, and then come back here. So today I want to pick up where we left off last week with trajectories. And then I want to integrate it into You Are What You Love. From our study last week, I think we can all agree that our trajectory is critically important. We need to have a vision or a tell-us of where we want to be at the end of our life, because that tell-us is the motivation for all the choices that we're going to make to get us there. And choice matters. Every choice we make is either leading us toward whatever our end goal is, or it is not. And for us, our end goal is Jesus. We want to make sure that the life beneath our external life is strong, and it's strong enough to support whatever the call is God has in our life. We want to have the character and the virtue to carry on as God's ambassadors in this life. So I want to introduce you to another gentleman who has given a lot of thought to trajectories, and his name is Gordon MacDonald. Gordon happened to be one of those leaders who crashed and burned and had the potential to not finish well. Instead, though, his crash drove him deep into the heart of spiritual formation, and it also drove him deep into thinking about how do people fail. MacDonald came up with 3 trajectories. The first group of Christian leaders would start strong, and then they would crash and burn. These leaders do not make the choices to support their inner life. And when their outer life gets too weighty, they make terrible choices and they crash. The second group of leaders he studied just plateau. They just stop growing. They stop caring. And so they never reach their potential and they never reach whatever their goal is at the end of their life. The last third are the leaders who do finish well. So I'm going to tell you Gordon's story because he represents the choices that we don't want to make. Gordon MacDonald was one of those leaders who started strong. He was born into privilege. He went to Wheaton College and they went right on to grad school. He also happened to be a very good writer. And so he was the first in his generation to write books. And this propelled him into the limelight early. Too early. During this time, MacDonald's goal subtly changed from seeking God and Christlikeness to being successful. His whole goal at this point was to build a big ministry. At 30, he had a lot of influence, but he had not developed his inner life. Everything revolved around his external journey. It's not like he didn't pray, but his prayers were how to make the ministry bigger, how to make the church better, how to attract people to his church. When he got to the place where he really needed to move from love of self for self's sake to love of God for God's sake, he wasn't able to do it. And if you haven't learned selflessness by the time you're 45, you are probably never going to learn it. He was vulnerable internally. So unfortunately, during this season, Gordon started counseling a woman at his church. When she couldn't meet during the day, he started to meet her in the evening. And you can guess where this is going. He got caught up in an affair. And it was during this time that his influence really peaked and he became the president of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Now this was before it all came out. When it did come out, Gordon MacDonald crashed hard in his external influence. Fortunately, he had begun some spiritual formation principles because he knew something was drastically wrong in his inner life. Now, after the crash, he decided to go deep personally and also in the research of the other leaders. And this is what he found. 1/3 of all Christian leaders start strong and then they crash. 1/3 plateau. There's no great moral failure. There's no crash. but they begin to believe their own press. They start to hold on to their external accomplishments like they were theirs and not God's. Success can so easily become God's in ministry. These folks can easily become petty and suspicious, and they often are just empty hulls of who they could have been. No one says, I want to be like them. They don't crash, but they also don't finish well. But then there are actually 1/3 of leaders who start behind, and then they excel. These are often people who are born without privilege. They aren't the flashiest or the brightest in their class. They didn't go to the right schools. Their kingdom influence starts really low. But because they're not distracted, they feed their internal life and it starts to grow. Often not until sometime in their mid-30s, both their internal life and their external life starts to accelerate. Now, according to Gordon MacDonald, the key age is right around 45. You can tell whether someone is going to plateau or crash somewhere in that 10-year period around age 45. So I would like to look at this phenomena in a rather famous biblical character. His name is King Solomon. So tune in next time to learn about Solomon's trajectory. Shalom.